Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. At the Supreme Court, justices hammer former President Trump's attorney over presidential immunity. Most seem skeptical of the argument, but it remains unclear when the High Court will rule, and Trump speaking out after day 7 of his criminal trial in Manhattan.
Clashes between police and demonstrators on campuses as anti-Israel protests continue. Some lawmakers are calling for an investigation into Chinese Communist Party funds behind the unrest.
New York's highest court throws out Harvey Weinstein's 2020 sex crimes conviction with a split ruling yesterday. We have the judge's reasons for the decision and some reactions.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken in China meets with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping. Blinken brings up China's support for Russia's military. His counterpart tells the U.S. to choose between cooperation and confrontation. Is the U.S. pushing hard enough? We have the analysis.
TikTok breaks its silence on a possible ban from U.S. app stores. A new law forces its Chinese regime-linked parent company to sell. Here its official response.
Southwest announced yesterday it's shutting down service at 4 airports. Which ones are affected and why Southwest is pulling out?
And Japan's beloved dish is captivating taste buds across the U.S. and South Korea. How one Tokyo-based company is bringing ramen into homes worldwide.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Today is Friday, April 26th.
The Supreme Court's under a lot of pressure right now. They're going through some serious hypotheticals, like a SEAL Team 6 assassination attempt by a president and whether he could be immune from that.
Yeah, they even busted out the history books and they talked about President Nixon's pardon.
Yeah.
So, yeah, topping the news today, the Supreme Court weighing arguments on whether a former president should have absolute immunity from criminal prosecution.
Several justices yesterday appeared likely to reject the claim. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
A majority of Supreme Court justices on Thursday seem poised to reject former President Trump's sweeping claim that he is immune from criminal prosecution. But the timing of their decision remains unclear. Trump's attorney, D. John Sauer, appealed 2 lower court decisions that ruled the former president could be charged, like any other defendant, for allegedly attempting to overturn the 2020 election results. Sauer said in opening statements that presidential immunity was paramount.
Without presidential immunity from criminal prosecution, there can be no presidency as we know it. For 234 years of American history, no president was ever prosecuted for his official acts.
He argued that prosecuting a president for his official acts was not supported by history or tradition. Despite Sauer's argument for absolute immunity, several justices focused on distinguishing official acts from private acts.
I'm having a hard time thinking that creating false documents, that submitting false documents, that ordering the assassination of a rival, that accepting a bribe, and countless other laws that could be broken for personal gain, that anyone would say that it would be reasonable for a president or any public official to do that.
Your Honor, as this court said very persuasively in Fitzgerald, the allegation that this particular act would be done for an unlawful purpose or was unlawful could be made in every case. And therefore, if that were the doctrine, that the allegation of improper purpose is what deprives the objective acts of their immunity, then the immunity would have no purchase.
Sauer conceded that private acts would not be protected by immunity. Some conservative justices signaled that the case might have to be sent back to the lower court to distinguish official acts from private in the indictment, which could further delay the trial, something special counsel Jack Smith has been arguing against. Justices could make a decision at any time between now and July. The later they decide, the more likely the trial will be delayed. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Meanwhile, outside the Supreme Court, protesters gathered behind the barricade.
NTD's Sam Wong was in the crowd to find out what they had to say about Trump's immunity case.
And what are you here for today?
A lot of reasons. I like to bring peace. I get people singing and dancing together, except I'm being bombarded by this lady. But I do want to show support for Donald Trump. He's going to win this case. He's going to win all 4 cases.
And I see you got Jack Smith on your beanie right now. And tell us what that's about.
Yeah, Merrick Garland, the patriarchy, is responsible for this delay in this thing. So finally, after all that time, nearly 2 years, Jack Smith is the person responsible, and I'm all here for it.
So do you think the president should be immune from prosecution?
All presidents are. But there is a process called impeachment. They made 2 attempts. He was acquitted both times.
There should not be complete immunity. If it was, then we basically would be like Russia.
It's obvious that the American people really do love Donald Trump, and that it'll be a landslide, as he puts it.
And in New York, Trump finished day 7 of his alleged campaign finance violation trial yesterday.
His team seeking to prove that Trump committed no crime as they cross-examined the prosecution's first witness. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao was in the courthouse in Manhattan.
Over the past few days, Trump has been voicing frustration over the New York judge's decision that made him stay here in New York instead of being able to attend the oral arguments in front of the Supreme Court. But on his way out of the courthouse, Trump says he's actually glad that he's forced to be here, as it was an interesting day in court.
Amazing testimony. This is a trial that should have never happened. This is a case that should have never been filed. An incredible day. Open your eyes.
At court proceeding, former tabloid executive David Pecker was testifying about an alleged scheme involving Trump and former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen to buy and then bury negative stories that he said could hurt Trump's 2016 campaign. But Trump's lawyers, when questioning Pecker, suggested that such so-called catch and kill deals are just standard practice at the publisher and were not criminal. Pecker also admitted himself that he would do the same thing for celebrities, again adding to Trump's team's defense that it's not a conspiracy or a crime related to Trump. Meanwhile, as the Biden campaign has been mocking Trump for being stuck at a courthouse, and Trump has been using his court appearances to campaign and talk to voters. And Trump addressed the latest GDP news, previewed his rallies in New York City, and also talked to construction workers in Manhattan.
We're gonna run very hard in New York. New York, we have a good chance of winning New York, in my opinion, but we're going to give it a shot.
And Trump also reacting to the Supreme Court oral arguments, calling them monumental.
Here, I hope it was made clear that a president has to have immunity.
And on Friday, we're going to see a big split screen moment as President Biden will also be in New York City as Trump begins day 8 of his criminal trial. Reporting from New York City, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Staying on Trump's business records trial in New York, for some discussion, let's welcome Jonathan Houlihan, the General Counsel and Director of Legal Operations at Citizens Defending Freedom. Great to have you here, Jonathan. Really important stuff. According to the New York Times, this is big news as we covered here, former publisher Pecker testified that he paid model McDougal $150,000 to bury the allegations of relations with Trump and disguised the payment as an agreement for a different service. How damaging is that to the defense?
Well, I mean, of course, it's not great, but it shows this whole criminal conspiracy is really a farce. It's made up. At the same time, you had David Pecker testifying that, hey, this is normal business practice in his world. He was the former publisher of the National Enquirer. I thought the cross-examination was brilliant, where they said, look, this is normal. We did this with Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger to cover up embarrassing news. We did this with Tiger Woods. We did this with former Obama Chief of Staff Ramen Emanuel. So while it was damaging, it was mitigated by the cross-examination to show this is a normal kind of business practice in this world on this so-called catch and kill scheme that the prosecution's alleging.
And on the other hand, Pecker reportedly said that he was aware that what he was doing was unlawful, that a corporation was spending money to affect the outcome of the election. Next, what do we expect Trump's attorneys to press Pecker on?
I think they'll continue to show that this is a normal business practice. He had done this many times to try and hurt his credibility. They'll continue to try and chip away at that this was some vast criminal conspiracy for election engineering or election interference, as they allege. I mean, I think the defense should continue to show this isn't a targeted crime. They're targeting the man. I mean, this entire trial is a show trial. They brought 34 counts of felony counts on a misdemeanor charge that had already passed the statute of limitations. This entire lawfare is it should be shown to be lawfare. What it is, they're targeting President Trump and not the crime, but the man.
So, Jonathan, who's gaining ground so far, the prosecution or the defense?
Well, they've got a difficult trial ahead because, look, if you look at the jury pool, you look at the judge, Judge Marchand. I mean, he donated to President Biden in 2020. His daughter is a Democrat fundraiser who's raised $100 million for the Democrats off this case. The jury pool obviously comes from Manhattan, so that's difficult. They voted 87% with Joe Biden, so it's not an easy road ahead. They've got a lot of difficulty. I think the best thing they can do is continue to try and destroy the credibility of the witnesses. Michael Cohen's coming up. He's a proved perjurer. They're going to use that to impeach him and show that his credibility can't be trusted, and hopefully the jury can make that determination.
What questions do you expect from the prosecution and the defense for Cohen?
I think they'll get into a lot of things that would have otherwise been attorney-client privilege. What was the payment for? What was the conspiracy? Was Trump trying to cover this up to benefit for the election? I think the defense will cross-examine that, destroy his credibility. They'll impeach the witness, as they call it. They'll try and show inconsistent statements. So whatever line of question they can do to show inconsistent statements and destroy his credibility.
Well, thank you so much for weighing in, Jonathan Houlihan, the General Counsel and Director of Legal Operations at Citizens Defending Freedom.
Thank you. Happy Friday.
A House committee says former President Trump's so-called hush money case is politically motivated.
The House Judiciary Committee announced a new report yesterday. It says Trump's prosecution erodes the American people's confidence in the justice system.
In a press release, the committee said DA Alvin Bragg's investigation and prosecution of Trump is the result of focusing on one individual in search of a crime.
In the report, the committee says Bragg weaponized the justice system to find anything in Trump's political, personal, or professional life that he could be used to be prosecuted for. The committee says this threatens to destroy the fundamental notion of blind justice.
According to the report, the case against Trump relies heavily on the testimony of just one witness, former lawyer Michael Cohen. The committee calls Cohen a convicted perjurer with a demonstrable prejudice against President Trump.
Mr. Bragg's office has not yet responded to a request for comment on the report.
Also, clashes between police and anti-Israel protesters continued yesterday across several campuses.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the unrest, which has resulted in around 550 arrests in the last week.
Back up! In Georgia, nearly 30 demonstrators were arrested at Emory University in Atlanta on Thursday. One demonstrator here appears to struggle against two police officers. A third officer can be seen using a taser to subdue him as cries of protest are heard all around. Georgia state troopers say protesters launched bottles at them and refused to leave when they arrived to break up a demonstration. Tear gas was also deployed. In New Jersey, 2 students were arrested during an anti-Israel protest at Princeton. The university says it happened after protesters set up a tent encampment. The pair were handcuffed with zip ties and led away by officers, while protesters chanted, "Disclose! Divest!" Princeton warned the day before that anyone involved in an encampment who refuses to stop after a warning would be arrested and immediately barred from campus. In Washington, D.C., demonstrators at Georgetown can be seen wearing the Palestinian keffiyeh, the black and white scarf widely considered a symbol of solidarity with the Palestinians. Posters with Party of Socialism and Liberation can be seen. Some protest groups have been linked to Marxist organizations, and some House lawmakers are now calling for investigations into Chinese Communist Party funds behind the anti-Israel protests. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar was greeted on Columbia's campus Thursday by multiple people wearing masks. Omar was there with her daughter, where she met with students in the encampment that anti-Israel students first erected last week. Outside Columbia, hundreds of pro-Israel demonstrators staged a counter-protest to the students, draped in Israeli and U.S. flags. Also in New York, new encampments were set up at City College of New York and the Fashion Institute of Technology. In California, over 90 demonstrators were arrested at USC on Wednesday. Administrators have canceled the May 10th graduation ceremony. They cited the burden of newly required security measures. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis addressed the demonstrations, calling university administrators weak and scared. DeSantis had a warning for those in the Sunshine State.
You do that in Florida at our universities, we're showing you the door. You're going to be expelled.
The anti-Israel movement has also gained steam abroad. In France, over 100 anti-Israel protesters were taken away by police from the Paris Institute of Political Studies. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The Hamas terror group is still holding 133 hostages. The Hostage Families Forum is staging a demonstration outside Columbia University in New York at 9:30 a.m. today to draw attention to their plight.
Has the world forgotten October 7th? Kelly Wright traveled to Israel to speak to survivors and hostages' family members.
They vow never to forget as they combat anti-Semitism and fight for freedom. Watch Hope for Israel and NTD News Primetime Special on Friday, April 26th at 10 p.m. Eastern here on NTD. And coming up, New York's highest court throws out Harvey Weinstein's 2020 sex crimes conviction with a split ruling yesterday. We have the judge's reasons for the decision and some reactions.
TikTok breaks its silence on a possible ban from U.S. app stores. A new law forces its Chinese regime-linked parent company to sell. Here, its official response.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken in China brings up Chinese regime support for Russia's military. His counterpart tells the U.S. to choose between cooperation and confrontation. Is the U.S. pushing hard enough? We have the analysis.
Is your shower trying to tell you something? Is getting in and out of the bathtub becoming a safety concern? Are you worried about the cost of a bathroom remodel that could go on for weeks and weeks? Well, now you can have a gorgeous new bath or shower that's safer at a price you can afford with a one-day jacuzzi bath remodel.
It was done the same day. We did not have to wait. It is amazing.
Working with the jacuzzi design consultants, it was a seamless process, and there really is an option for everyone.
I would give this whole experience an A+. I definitely wish I would have called sooner.
Jacuzzi has been making water feel great for more than 65 years. So you know it's a brand you can trust, and their products come with a lifetime warranty for a style you'll love for years to come. Plus, there has never been a better time to buy. We're waiving all installation costs and postponing all payments for up to 1 year. There are so many designs to choose from, including my Christina Preferred collection. Plus, we offer free, personalized, in-home design services to build the bath you've always wanted, right in your own space. And let's talk about accessories. From soft close shower doors and adjustable shower heads to features like grab bars and custom seats that combine safety and style to keep you feeling comfortable and independent for years to come. Plus, cleanup's a breeze with no grimy grout and no scrubbing. It just rinses clean. It's never been easier. Get your free design consultation, schedule your one-day installation, and start loving your new bath or shower right away.
Call or go online right now for a limited time offer. Only weeks left to get waived installation and no interest and no payments for up to 1 year. Go to jacuzzibathremodel.com or call 800-990-3537. That's 800-990-3537. Call now.
Water.
nature's ultimate cleaner. We drink it, we bathe in it. Think water, think steam, think clean. Now harness the power of water with the H2O X5 5-in-1 steam cleaning system.
I'm so impressed with the X5. It's an all-in-one product. I can use it throughout my entire house.
It's cleaning, it's sanitizing, there's no chemicals in it. It's just steam.
This is unbelievable. There is no more odor. You could spend over $500 to purchase the products that the X5 5-in-1 Miracle replaces. Order your H2O X5 steam cleaning system, a $500 value, for just 4 easy payments of $43. Order now and we'll upgrade your X5 package. We'll add a 6th mode with a dusting and polishing wand. Valued at over $30, this extra bonus attachment makes your H2O X5 the H2O X6. That means your 10-piece system becomes a 12-piece system at no extra cost to you. All for just 3 easy payments of $43. Call or click right now.
Good to have you back. A New York appeals court overturned Harvey Weinstein's 2020 sex crimes conviction yesterday.
The court found the trial judge unfairly allowed testimony against Weinstein based on allegations that weren't part of the case. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the ruling and some reactions.
New York's highest court threw out Harvey Weinstein's 2020 rape conviction on Thursday. The reversal comes 4 years after the Hollywood producer was sentenced to 23 years in prison on multiple sex crimes. The 7-justice appeals court, in a split 4-3 vote, said the trial judge had made a critical mistake by letting women testify even though their accusations were not part of the charges Weinstein faced. Judge Jenny Rivera wrote the court compounded its mistakes by letting Weinstein be cross-examined on the allegations, influencing jurors. Rivera said the synergistic effect of the errors was not harmless.
No one's above the law, but no one's beneath the law either.
Weinstein's defense attorney Arthur Aidala, after the ruling, called it a great day for the U.S. and the world.
Because it instills in us the faith that there is a justice system.
Weinstein's case helped trigger the Me Too movement, with some states like New York passing laws that allowed civil lawsuits for alleged sexual misconduct, even as statutes of limitations had passed.
This is not a blow to the movement. It is a clarion call.
Me Too movement founder Tarana Burke says the decision, while devastating for survivors, underscores the issue at hand.
10 years ago, we could not get a man like Harvey Weinstein into a courtroom. And you need to be clear about that.
Me Too advocates noted Thursday's ruling was based on legal technicalities and not exoneration. Weinstein's lawyer said he will remain jailed through any new trial proceedings and is set to return to L.A., as he also faces a separate 16-year prison term in California after being convicted there for rape and sexual assault last year. The Manhattan DA's office stated Thursday it would do everything in its power to retry Weinstein's case. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
TikTok's Chinese regime-linked parent company Bytedance, facing a U.S. ban, says it has no plans to sell the popular app.
The statement overnight is the company's first official response to the new U.S. law that gives TikTok roughly 1 year to find a new owner.
President Biden signed the measure into law as part of the national security bill this week.
If Bytedance fails to sell, TikTok will face a total ban from U.S. app stores. The White House says the law is not about a ban and wants to see TikTok sold.
The administration says the concern is over China's ownership and control of the app.
TikTok CEO says the company would fight in courts to stay in the U.S. India banned TikTok entirely in 2020.
And Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping in Beijing today.
Blinken, ending his 3-day visit, raised concerns about Beijing's support for Russia's military.
Blinken's met with his counterpart Wang Yi earlier in the day. The State Department says the two sides also talked about Taiwan and the South China Sea.
Wang warned the U.S. is facing a choice between stability and a downward spiral, cooperation or confrontation. He claimed the U.S. is trying to suppress China's economy, trade, science, and technology.
Wang, in meetings, also accused the U.S. of overhyping concerns about China's manufacturing overcapacity, flooding global markets.
The Chinese regime passed a new tariff law today meant to retaliate against any actions it might face.
And joining me now for more on this meeting is retired Colonel John Mills. He's a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy and author of The Nation Will Follow. Good morning, John. Good to have you back on here. So first, please tell us a bit more about what goal Blinken has brought with him this time to his trip to China, and what kind of progress will he want to make?
Thank you. Good morning, Evelyn. I think the biggest concern and the highest priority are Chinese sustainment and sales to Russia for the war effort in Ukraine. I think the challenge is, even if this is an intelligence collection priority above the cut line, it's very hard for America and our Five Eyes partners to validate exactly what's going on. But I think it's just absolutely clear Russia would not be surviving if it wasn't for Chinese and then also North Korean aid and support to the war effort. So I think that's the number one thing. But there is the concern, they've been using the term overproduction, which is an interesting new expression, but it's the same strategy of China, is to target and destroy market sectors. But there's also issues like Bytedance's control of TikTok, the ZPMC Crane situation, which the Biden executive order targeted in February.
Very interesting. And on the Russia issue, that China is aiding Russia, as you said, that's one of the bigger issues. And they had already announced a limitless friendship a while ago. But we're also seeing, China forming ties with dictatorships around the world. Most notably, there was Iran now recently, but also North Korea. What do you make of that?
Well, clearly there is the no limits agreement between Putin, which started fall of 2021, but it clearly also includes Iran, North Korea, Venezuela. This is an agreement to topple America. And I don't think the Biden team has taken this matter seriously, although since December, other members of the Biden administration, such as FBI Director Wray, DHS CISA Director Jennifer Easterly, and now even NSA Director General Howe, have been pulling the alarm bell on malign Chinese preparation for conflict. And they've been using almost exactly that expression. This is preparation for conflict, the pre-placement of malware. So the Biden team has just not taken this seriously until very recently. Unfortunately, I don't know if they're going to able to change the trajectory of what's happening.
Okay, so, and I want to touch on that a little later again, but first, so China warned of a downward spiral in the relationship during the talks with Blinken. So what do you think China's foreign minister meant by that? How would that look like?
Well, clearly that was a not so veiled reference to conflict in the Western Pacific. And I think that's really the issue, is China prepared to move on toward Taiwan, around Taiwan? One thing I think might be it'll satisfy Xi's desire to deliver something to suppress his domestic issues and any kind of internal competition seeking to replace him, and that's essentially swiping the forward county for Taiwan, Kinmen Island. So I think that the Chinese are always very nuanced in their expressions, sometimes so nuanced it's really hard to figure out what they're talking about. No question, this is referencing conflict in the Western Pacific.
Got it. And just in a couple of seconds, I want to get your take on this, because Mike Gallagher, the chairman of the Select Committee on the CCP, co-authored this article with the message that America's competition with China must be won, not managed. You touched on it a little bit, but where does the administration stand on this? Would they be on the same page?
I think they're very, unfortunately, duplicitous and just unclear. And I don't think they even know where they are on this. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. The Biden administration, they look at the world through a prism of utopia. And I think Gallagher's comment, he is departing, but is accurate. It can't be managed. It needs to be won. And the Biden team is not showing that. This is always so important. Clarity and resolve. Clarity and resolve prevents conflict. Lack of clarity, lack of resolve encourages conflict.
I see what you're saying here. Thank you so much, John Mills, for your insights this morning.
Thank you, Evelyn.
And Russian President Vladimir Putin said yesterday he plans to visit China in May.
That would be the first foreign trip for the Russian leader since he extended his rule for 6 more years.
Putin announced the plans for the visit at a Congress of the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs in Moscow. He didn't say when exactly it would take place. The Russian leader's inauguration is scheduled for May 7th.
Russia's growing economic and diplomatic isolation because of its war against Ukraine has made it increasingly reliant on China. Media outlets reported last week, citing unnamed U.S. officials, that Beijing has boosted sales of machine tools, microelectronics, and other technology to Russia. Moscow is reportedly using the equipment to produce missiles, tanks, aircraft, and other weapons.
Coming up, divisions within the House Republican Conference persist even abroad. Our correspondent Luis Martinez joins us live from Budapest.
And President Biden announces a multi-billion-dollar deal with a chip manufacturing company. Will this be the incentive the domestic microchip industry has been waiting for? And a cargo ship left Baltimore harbor for the first time since the Key Bridge collapse in March. But there's still work to do before the port is fully operational again.
My name is Peter Lone, and I will be executed in 2 hours. Why am I being executed, you ask? Well, would you like the long story or the short one?
Once a man lost to the night.
Are you a good person? No. If you guys died today, where would you guys go then?
I don't know. How about none of your business? Get lost.
A drug runner walking on the path to destruction. Forced to pay the price for his sins.
I sentenced all of you to death by firing squad.
You're in this rotting jail for one reason and one reason alone. You're discarded pieces of trash.
Shut up! Get in there.
This isn't America. You don't wait 30 years for you to die. Here, we get the job done.
Confronted by anger, surrounded by despair, he stood facing the abyss.
I'll kill you! Do it!
But in the darkest hour, a light shone through. Redemption called his name.
Who among us in this room would like to be saved by Jesus Christ? Please come forward. Accept his blessing.
I found salvation, brother.
He even found love in the most unexpected place.
Care to get lunch with me one of these days?
With time running out,
one-time drug dealer turned pastor,
a man changed by faith.
I want you to take over the church.
Faces his final test.
Will be executed by firing squad tonight.
What will his last choice be?
Whatever you're saying, I'm not buying.
I'm not selling anything.
You're selling Jesus, no?
Jesus is for free, and salvation is a gift.
A painting that has true beauty. I imagine it's like a door. The artist holds the key to open the door and bring people to a purer world. A world where people are more compassionate.
Welcome back. Divisions within the House Republican Conference persist even abroad. Our correspondent Luis Martinez joins us live from Budapest after speaking with U.S. members of Congress attending CPAC in Hungary. Good morning, Luis. Really good to see you. So what are congressmen saying about the current state of U.S. politics?
Yes, good evening and very well. Good morning to you. It's afternoon over here in Budapest, Hungary. Well, there's at least 3 U.S. representatives who came to CPAC Hungary 2024, and we know that Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, has a threat hanging over his head during this recess in Congress because over a month ago, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene filed a motion to vacate, and since then, 2 other congressmen have supported that motion. That's Representative Paul Gosar from Arizona and Tom Massey from Kentucky. I spoke today with Congressman Keith Self, the Republican from Texas, and this is what he had to say about Mike Johnson's defense. And Mike Johnson defended that he passed the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act reauthorization and also the 2024 fiscal budget, as well as foreign aid to Ukraine with the help of Democrats, and that the reason he did that is because he has a razor-thin majority. This is what Congressman Keith Self had to say back to Speaker Johnson.
No, it's not an excuse at all. We need to continue to stand for conservative principles. We need to act on them. We need to get people on the record for voting for conservative principles or against conservative principles. And I'm talking about Republicans voting for or against Republican conservative principles.
And to show the clear differences of opinion within the House Republican Conference, I spoke with Congressman Andy Harris, a Republican from Maryland, and he had a very different answer to the approach of ousting or not, supporting or not Speaker Mike Johnson. Let's listen to what Congressman Andy Harris had to say.
You know, we're getting into the middle of an election year, and to be honest, Congress usually doesn't do too much after the middle of an election year. So I don't think creating chaos at this point in time is a good idea. I think we can have this discussion after the elections if we want.
I also had the opportunity to speak with a former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum, and I asked him the same question, if he thought that divisions in the House Republican Conference were enough to oust Speaker Johnson for not defending the principles that most of their representatives campaigned for. Let's listen to what former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum had to say.
The people who go out there and say that are just doing it to promote themselves. They're not being helpful. They're not being truthful to conservatives. The idea that a one-seat majority in the House of Representatives against the president of the other party, against the Senate of the other party, and against a media that is fundamentally against you, that somehow or another you should control Washington, is a fallacy.
So it was clear here in Budapest as well as in the House of Representatives back in Washington, D.C., that there are some clear differences among House Republicans. But former Senator Rick Santorum and both Andy Harris, Congressman from Maryland, and Keith Self from Texas all agreed that the struggle against global elites is a theme that unites conservatives worldwide. Reporting from Budapest, Hungary, Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Luis Martinez. Really good to hear from all of them. Thanks for your report. And President Biden pitched what he called the Great American Comeback in New York yesterday.
He announced a $6 billion agreement with chip manufacturer Micron Technology. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the story.
The agreement between the Department of Commerce and Micron Technology includes up to $6.1 billion in subsidies for 2 microchip factories. It's part of the 2022 Chips and Science Act, which aims to boost domestic manufacturing and reduce dependence on China and Taiwan. President Biden said the U.S. once had 40% of the chips market, but over time production moved outside the country. Biden said the pandemic exposed weaknesses in the supply chain that hurt critical industries.
We're bringing advanced chips manufacturing back to America after 40 years, and it's going to transform our semiconductor industry.
The Commerce Department said the federal grants would support the construction of 2 fabrication plants in Clay, New York. Micron plans to invest $100 billion there, which it says will create over 13,000 jobs. The grants also provide initial funding for a facility in Boise, Idaho. Micron is looking at a $25 billion investment there and the creation of 6,500 jobs. The White House said the deal also included at least $40 million in funds for training and workforce development, and that the company has, quote, affirmed it respects workers' rights to organize, to share feedback without fear of reprisal, and to collectively bargain. The Biden administration has positioned itself as a supporter of unionization. Biden has sought the support of several major unions during his presidential campaign. A progressive think tank called him the most pro-union president in history. Biden is selling the agreement as the Great American Comeback story. He signed the $52 billion CHIPS Act in 2022 to subsidize domestic semiconductor production and research. Conservative lawmakers opposed the bill at the time, calling it corporate welfare. Senator Mike Lee of Utah said using tax dollars to subsidize corporations would increase inflation and hurt ordinary Americans. Walter Lohman, who is with conservative think tank the Heritage Foundation, said, quote, giving taxpayer money away to rich corporations is not competing with China. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
And the first cargo ship has successfully left Baltimore Harbor after the Key Bridge collapsed last month.
It's a sign the recovery is moving forward at the major port.
The ship, called the Balsa 94, sailed through a temporary deepwater channel made around the wreckage of the bridge. It was accompanied by 2 tugboats.
The Maryland Port Administration said this channel will likely be open for about 4 days. It is set to close again until May 10th.
During this time, officials said they will work on removing pieces of the bridge left in the water and try to refloat the ship that caused the collapse.
Crews have removed roughly 2,900 tons of debris from the tragic wreck. The accident killed 6 construction workers. A massive fire broke out yesterday at Oceanside Pier in San Diego County, California. Clouds of smoke blanketed parts of the pier as firefighters responded from the ground. Helicopters were called in from above to make multiple water drops on the flames. The Oceanside Fire Department said the fire started in a vacant restaurant at the far end of the pier. Officials reported no injuries and said everyone working on or visiting the pier is accounted for. Fire inspectors are on the scene to investigate the cause of the fire. Oceanside Pier is the longest wooden overwater pier on the West Coast.
Coming up, Southwest Airlines has announced it's shutting down service at 4 airports.
Find out which airports are affected and why the airline is pulling out. Every central banker's worst nightmare, stagflation. Is it becoming a reality in the U.S.? The host of NTD's Business Matters breaks down the latest economic data from the Commerce Department.
The shining gem of New England. This delightful seaside city of Newport is one of the most beautiful places in the state. Today, we bring you here as we meet with our friends and fellow musicians from the Hermitage Piano Trio. As a team, they have garnered multiple Grammy Award nominations with their breathtaking performances.
Oh, wow, I did not think this instrument can make that sound, right?
The pandemic made this reunion even more special.
3 of us, we like it because we feel music the same way, so...
Don't miss us on the next episode of Piano Talks.
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms. Thank you. Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters, it's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast? No thanks, we're good. They're always in their own world. What'd you get there? Twice the work. Twice the surprises. Just try it. But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling. I think you should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
adopting you was the best decision in our life. And I am so proud to call you my son.
Welcome back, everyone. Joining us now is NTD's Business Matters host, Don Ma, to give us the latest updates from the financial world.
Let's talk about the economy, Don.
Yep. So fears over stagflation apparently mounting in the U.S. And as you said before the commercial break, it is every central banker's worst nightmare. So the context of this discussion here today is yesterday's GDP report. So the gross domestic product data showed that the U.S. economy grew at an annualized rate of 1.6% in the first quarter versus the previous quarter of 3.4%. So we are definitely seeing a slowdown here. Economic growth slowing. I mean, this is good from the Federal Reserve's perspective because they want to slow down inflation. But the problem is inflation not really slowing down here. And on the contrary, it's been speeding up a little bit for the past few months now. And this is basically what stagflation is. I'm not saying that the U.S. is in stagflation, but the economy is slowing down and prices are still rising. So that's, that is not a good combination. The data we got yesterday is not good. And there's a growing consensus apparently among economists and investment strategists that the days of the Goldilocks economy where inflation is coming down without slowing GDP, those days could be numbered.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. So we're gonna look at the National Review headline that says that the road to stagflation is paved with Bidenomics, and they just point to that deficit spending, saying that it's stifling this economic sector business activities here. So we're going to talk about Google's parent company Alphabet next. It has its earnings report out. What happened there?
Yeah, so something very interesting here, and I want to bring your attention to that, which is Alphabet, Google's parent. Its first ever dividend announced and a $70 billion stock payback. So it made investors really happy, which sent the stock surging yesterday after hours. And the Google parent is returning capital while spending billions of dollars on data centers to catch up with rivals on generative artificial intelligence. So the dividend will be 20 cents per share, and Alphabet's announced dividend payouts and buybacks on top of the solid earnings, and not only a breath of fresh air for the tech market but as a whole, but also a very intelligent strategy for the search engine giant going through a tough time of the year right now. And the search firm beat estimates on first quarter revenue that was powered by rising demand for its cloud services on the back of increasing adoption of artificial intelligence and steady spending on advertising too.
Well, I guess good strategy. Yeah, I think their shares surged 16% after that. So let's switch gears here. Net neutrality is back. What's the situation right now?
Sure. So the U.S. government on Thursday banned internet service providers from meddling in the speeds of their customers receive when browsing the web and downloading files. So the net neutrality regulations adopted yesterday by the Federal Communications Commission, it prohibits providers, for example, AT&T, Comcast, Verizon, prevents them from selectively speeding up or slowing down or blocking users' internet traffic. So the FCC is redefining internet service as similar to that of potentially, telephone lines here. And it's a sweeping move that comes with greater regulatory power over the broadband industry. And the FCC said it would step in to override state or local policies that, if conflict with the federal net neutrality rule.
Yeah, and Brendan Carr, who's at the FCC, he said that these rules are going to keep companies from bringing forth those network upgrades. Next, it seems like an airline's not doing well. Can you tell us about that, Don?
Yeah, so in contrast to happiness surrounding Google, airlines, not the same story here. Southwest Airlines reported earnings yesterday, and what they said is that it's closing operations at 4 airports over delays with Boeing jet deliveries, and the airline will no longer serve Bellingham International Airport in Washington State, Cozumel International Airport in Mexico, and Syracuse Hancock International Airport in New York. Now, service to Houston's George Bush International Airport will be suspended, but the airline will continue to serve the city's older, smaller Hobby Airport. Southwest also announcing it lost $218 million in the first quarter of this year. This is despite making a record first quarter gross revenue of $6.3 billion. So the carrier will also make changes to operations in other markets. This includes cutting flights at Chicago O'Hare and Atlanta International Airports.
Wow. Well, cutting flights, but that's serious. It's also after, because United also announced recently they're not cutting flights, but they're saying they paused pilot hiring and they even asked them to take unpaid leave. So Boeing's causing some serious ripple effects here. And let's move on to New York City. It seems like we have some new laws coming here.
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about those right now. So what is happening is, yes, you're right. New York City residents may soon see warning labels for sugary foods and drinks in chain restaurants and coffee shops. So this new law gonna take effect later this year. Food businesses with 15 or more stores must post a black and white spoon warning icon next to menu items containing at least 50 grams of added sugar. Businesses also is going to have to post a written label here saying the warning indicates the added sugar in the item is higher than the daily recommended limit of added sugar for a 2,000 calorie diet. This rule scheduled to begin in June for packaged goods items and in December for other items.
Man, imagine that, having one item that has more of the whole daily recommended limit just in one. And the warning label also says that too many added sugars can contribute to type 2 diabetes and weight gain. Very serious stuff. There's another law too, right?
Yeah, and it seems like weight loss and muscle building supplements to minors in New York is now illegal. So the first in the nation law went into effect this week, and the law allows states to fine businesses that sell kids' diet pills or supplements as promoted as helping to build muscle or burn fat. The law was challenged by at least 2 lawsuits from industry groups. They argue the law is too vague and that food regulation is the FDA's responsibility.
Well, but got to take care of those little ones' health of the next generation. Thank you so much, Don Ma, host of NTD's Business Matters. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Don. Stay with us. A much-loved dish in Japan is captivating taste buds across the U.S. and South Korea. Find out how one Tokyo-based company is bringing ramen into homes worldwide.
A performance that truly matters. For each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. Coming to Lincoln Center, NJ-PAC, State Theater, Purchase, and Stamford. Starting March 28th. Tickets at genuine.com.
What most people know from Christopher Columbus is that in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. There's so much more to the story of Columbus that today very few people know the actual story of Columbus. For example, Columbus had more than one voyage to America, which is shocking for most people to discover, but the reality is he had 4 voyages. And today, in modern culture, there's a lot of people very critical of Christopher Columbus. In fact, over the last couple of years, when there was a movement to tear down statues, Christopher Columbus had over 600 statues erected to him around the world, and the vast majority of those statues were torn down, were vandalized, but they're really tearing down these monuments of Columbus without even knowing what Columbus even did. Right, and so let's go through this, because some of the accusations we hear today is, right, Columbus enslaved the Native Americans. You can hear a lot of negative things today, so let's just back up.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. One in 3 adults has prediabetes, and you could be one of them. There are usually no signs for prediabetes. so it's important to understand your risk. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. And you can change the outcome. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
We are taught you don't talk about your problems with nobody because you could get in trouble. And I've been through a lot. Anxiety, depression, sexual assault. When I decided to get help, my life changed. And the mental health box, that was one of the big tools. Accepting help means that we are allowing somebody to bless our life. It's freeing. We got stronger together. Love your mind.
Welcome back. Let's talk about ramen. It's one of the most beloved dishes in Japanese cuisine.
The comforting noodles are also becoming increasingly popular in the US and South Korea. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the culinary trend.
Often cooked right before your eyes behind dingy counters, ramen comes in various flavors and local specialties. Some Japanese frequent ramen places 2 or 3 times a week. The traditional Japanese dish is also gaining traction in the US.
I think there will continue to be interesting ramen in Japan, especially Tokyo, where they're experimenting. And then also outside of Japan, I think we're going to see some very interesting ramen.
Mexican chain Del Taco recently introduced shredded beef birria ramen.
Noodles and soup around the world is consumed in so many different countries. A lot of countries on the world have their own version of ramen in a way. So I think because of that, it's a dish that's easy to understand. It's a dish that's easy to get behind.
Graduate student Katie Sell says ramen is much different from the food she grew up with.
I think ramen is just, it's so soothing, it's so warm, and it's got such depth of flavor that trying the different ones is just like a very fun, like very warm experience. So I think a lot of fun just to get to try a lot of the different ones, but I think that's why I like ramen as
Gourmet Innovation in Tokyo has signed on 250 of Japan's top ramen joints to sell packaged versions of their dishes. Co-founder and executive chef Kenichi Nomaguchi says ramen is difficult to replicate at home. Making it involves hours of cooking the stock, using pork, beef, chicken, and various fish.
To cook ramen, you have to boil bones and meat for a very long time to make the broth. Dishes like curry or gyoza dumplings or udon are relatively easier to make at home. But if you try to make a bowl of ramen from scratch, it's extremely troublesome.
But that doesn't mean enthusiastic home cooks can't try. If it doesn't work out, one of Nomaguchi's frozen ramen should provide the desired experience. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Some seaweed, a little sprout to garnish it.
Oh, so good. I have to say, I'm not good at doing this at home. I'm more of the restaurant goer for ramen. At home, it's only just out of packet, which is not good. But anyway,
let the pros do
great.
it. Yeah, they're
exactly.
good at it. And you know, according to Japan Quarterly, actually Chinese immigrants in the 19th century were the ones who introduced ramen to Japan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
That Chinese sweet noodle soup.
All right, we're gonna head to a quick break here and we'll be right back, so stay with us.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. At the Supreme Court, justices hammer former President Trump's attorney over presidential immunity. Most seem skeptical of the argument, but it remains unclear when the High Court will rule. And former President Trump speaking out after day 7 of his criminal trial in Manhattan.
Clashes between police and demonstrators on campuses as anti-Israel protests continue. Some lawmakers are calling for an investigation into Chinese Communist Party funds behind the unrest.
New York's highest court throws out Harvey Weinstein's 2020 sex crime conviction with a split ruling yesterday. We have the judge's reasons for the decision and some reactions.
A close race in the polls between former President Trump and President Biden. How are they doing in critical swing states in this close rematch?
TikTok breaks its silence on a possible ban from U.S. app stores. A new law forces its Chinese regime-linked parent company to sell. Hear its official response.
The Hubble Space Telescope turns 34 years old. NASA releases a stunning new portrait to mark the anniversary.
And a young man receives divine inspiration to become a police officer. The years in service, he says, helped shape him for a future journey to build a special school for those in need.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Happy Friday, everyone. Today is April 26th. And topping the news today are clashes between police and anti-Israel protesters that continued yesterday across several campuses.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the unrest, which has resulted in around 550 arrests in the last week.
Back up! In Georgia, nearly 30 demonstrators were arrested at Emory University in Atlanta on Thursday. One demonstrator here appears to struggle against 2 police officers. A third officer can be seen using a taser to subdue him, as cries of protest are heard all around. Georgia state troopers say protesters launched bottles at them and refused to leave when they arrived to break up a demonstration. Tear gas was also deployed. In New Jersey, 2 students were arrested during an anti-Israel protest at Princeton. The university says it happened after protesters set up a tent encampment. The pair were handcuffed with zip ties and led away by officers, while protesters chanted, Princeton warned the day before that anyone involved in an encampment who refuses to stop after a warning would be arrested and immediately barred from campus. Outside Columbia, hundreds of pro-Israel demonstrators staged a counter-protest to the students, draped in Israeli and U.S. flags. Also in New York, new encampments were set up at City College of New York and the Fashion Institute of Technology. In California, over 90 demonstrators were arrested at USC on Wednesday. Administrators have canceled the May 10th graduation ceremony. They cited the burden of newly required security measures. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis addressed the demonstrations, calling university administrators weak and scared. DeSantis had a warning for those in the Sunshine State.
You do that in Florida at our universities, we're showing you the door. You're going to be expelled.
The anti-Israel movement has also gained steam abroad. In France, over 100 anti-Israel protesters were taken away by police from the Paris Institute of Political Studies. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And the Hamas terror group is still holding 133 hostages. The Hostage Families Forum is staging a demonstration outside Columbia University in New York at 9:30 a.m. today to draw attention to their plight. And the Supreme Court yesterday heard oral arguments over whether former President Trump is immune from criminal prosecution for his decisions while in office.
An appeals court in Washington had previously rejected his immunity claim. And today's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more from the Supreme Court.
The 9 justices heard oral arguments on Thursday over whether former President Trump is immune from criminal prosecution for his actions in 2020. This case all boils down to special counsel Jack Smith of the DOJ, who charged Trump with interfering with the 2020 election results. Trump has pled not guilty and said that he was acting in his official capacity as president at the time. He said that presidential immunity is important because future presidents without this immunity would not act on anything out of fear of prosecution when they left office. Here are some highlights from the hearing.
Without presidential immunity from criminal prosecution, there can be no presidency as we know it. For 234 years of American history, no president was ever prosecuted for his official acts.
I'm having a hard time thinking that creating false documents, that submitting false documents, that ordering the assassination of a rival, that accepting a bribe, and countless other laws that could be broken for personal gain, that anyone would say that it would be reasonable for a president or any public official to do that.
Your Honor, as this court said very persuasively in Fitzgerald, the allegation that this particular act would be done for an unlawful purpose or was unlawful could be made in every case. And therefore, if that were the doctrine, that the allegation of improper purpose is what deprives the objective acts of their immunity, then the immunity would have no purchase.
The Supreme Court could send this case back to a district court for further consideration. They could also rule in Trump's favor or in the Justice Department's favor. If they rule in Trump's favor, then this entire prosecution goes away, and it could even impact his Georgia RICO case. If they rule in the Justice Department's favor, then this presidential immunity no longer applies to Trump, and he would be tried as a regular defendant. If reelected, Trump could order the Justice Department to drop the case. Now, justices are expected to rule on this case by the end of June, but it's unclear if the entire case will come to fruition by the November election. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And in New York, Trump finished day 7 of his alleged campaign finance violation trial yesterday.
His team seeking to prove that Trump committed no crime as they cross-examined the prosecution's first witness. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao was at the courthouse in Manhattan.
Over the past few days, Trump has been voicing frustration over the New York judge's decision that made him stay here in New York instead of being able to attend the oral arguments in front of the Supreme Court. But on his way out of the courthouse, Trump says he's actually glad that he's forced to be here, as it was an interesting day in court.
Amazing testimony. This is a trial that should have never happened. This is a case that should have never been filed. An incredible day. Open your eyes.
At court proceeding, former tabloid executive David Pecker was testifying about an alleged scheme involving Trump and former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen to buy and then bury negative stories that he said could hurt Trump's 2016 campaign. But Trump's lawyers, when questioning Pecker, suggested that such so-called catch and kill deals are just standard practice at the publisher and were not criminal. Pecker also admitted himself that he would do the same thing for celebrities, again adding to Trump's team's defense that it's not a conspiracy or a crime related to Trump. Meanwhile, as the Biden campaign has been mocking Trump for being stuck at a courthouse, and Trump has been using his court appearances to campaign and talk to voters. And Trump addressed the latest GDP news, previewed his rallies in New York City, and also talked to construction workers in Manhattan.
We're gonna run very hard in New York. New York, we have a good chance of winning New York, in my opinion, but we're gonna give it a shot.
And Trump also reacting to the Supreme Court oral arguments, calling them monumental.
Here, I hope it was made clear that a president has to have immunity.
And on Friday, we're going to see a big split screen moment as President Biden will also be in New York City as Trump begins day 8 of his criminal trial. Reporting from New York City, Iris Tao, NTD News.
A new poll by 538 shows former President Trump leading Biden in swing states, while the two frontrunners are tied nationally. To unpack this, we're bringing in Keith Gross, a Republican candidate for U.S. Senate in Florida. Keith, thanks for joining us this morning. Since the presidency is decided based on the Electoral College and not popular vote, how significant is it that Trump has a lead in these swing states?
You know, I think that when we look at the way this election's going to go, as you pointed out, the Electoral College tends to be quite different from the popular vote at times. Ultimately, even looking at this poll, though, I see Trump pulling ahead. I think the probability of a Trump presidency is getting better and better every day that Americans live through Biden's policies because it's running up costs for everyday families. No one's enjoying Bidenomics. Everyone was doing better under the Trump presidency, and we want another term.
Keith, can you offer an explanation as to why it would be in Georgia that Trump has the highest margin over Biden among these swing states?
Well, I think part of the reason is the Georgia prosecution, where it's clear that the government there has gone after him in a corrupt way, and that weaponization has woken up a lot of people who may not have been paying attention before, but now they see that if the government is willing to go after someone like Donald Trump on made-up charges, they could go after anyone.
Well, in Georgia, we see from this 538 poll that Trump has a 6-point lead there, so it's very significant. Let's talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. How is he going to impact this election as an X factor?
You know, I think if anything, he may take away some votes from someone like Biden, who is incredibly weak and not even popular among Democrats. Donald Trump's not going to lose any voters. People that love Donald Trump are going to always love Donald Trump because he is a unique force of nature in American politics and seems to care only about putting our country back on the right track. He's sacrificing his time and his personal fortune to do it, and that is an inspiration.
Well, this 538 poll shows that Kennedy has support from 10% of voters, so that's no small margin there. It's going to make a big difference here. Now, have we seen a shift in voter sentiment throughout Biden's time in office and while Trump is fending off these legal battles?
Of course, you know, voter sentiment has changed a lot during Biden's time in office because Biden's policies are wrecking this country. We're seeing an uptick in Marxist ideology. Where do you think these protesters are coming from on college campuses? It's coming from the left ideology being pushed through our schools, through our society at every level. On top of all that, the economy, it is not where it needs to be. We've got inflation at record high levels, and it's sustained for a long term. And it's because of excessive government spending. We've got to get our government spending under control. And the only thing this administration seems to know how to do is expand government and demand more in taxes. We're already paying too much in taxes.
Keith, on that note, Pew Research Center shows that Biden's approval rating among Americans went from 54% in 2021 to now down to 35%. And notably, it's only 65% among Democrats, very low for a candidate of their own party. Which candidate, Trump or Biden, is going to offer more freedom to Americans, and why?
You know, I think we have seen it time and time again that what's happening on the left is apparently an appetite for unlimited government expansion, unlimited government control. When you look at the difference during COVID of what happened in Democrat-ran areas versus areas ran by Republicans, the Republican areas were generally free and open. You know, like my home state of Florida was a free, open paradise compared to these leftist cities like New York, where they were locking people down and demanding all sorts of, you know, vaccine papers and that sort of government control and invasion into personal liberties and personal freedom. That is something that is definitely more prevalent on the left. And so I think we're going to see more and more Americans waking up to the idea that if we want to preserve our freedoms, we need to start electing constitutional conservatives to the Republican Party.
Keith Gross, Republican candidate for U.S. Senate in Florida. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much.
And in other news, a New York appeals court overturned Harvey Weinstein's 2020 sex crimes conviction yesterday.
The court found the trial judge unfairly allowed testimony against Weinstein based on allegations that weren't part of the case. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the ruling and some reactions.
New York's highest court threw out Harvey Weinstein's 2020 rape conviction on Thursday. The reversal comes 4 years after the Hollywood producer was sentenced to 23 years in prison on multiple sex crimes. The 7-justice appeals court, in a split 4-3 vote, said the trial judge had made a critical mistake by letting women testify even though their accusations were not part of the charges Weinstein faced. Judge Jenny Rivera wrote the court compounded its mistakes by letting Weinstein be cross-examined on the allegations, influencing jurors. Rivera said the synergistic effect of the errors was not harmless.
No one's above the law, but no one's beneath the law either.
Weinstein's defense attorney Arthur Aidala, after the ruling, called it a great day for the U.S. and the world.
Because it instills in us the faith that there is a justice system.
Weinstein's case helped trigger the Me Too movement, with some states like New York passing laws that allowed civil lawsuits for alleged sexual misconduct, even as statutes of limitations had passed.
This is not a blow to the movement. It is a clarion call.
Me Too movement founder Tarana Burke says the decision, while devastating for survivors, underscores the issue at hand.
10 years ago, we could not get a man like Harvey Weinstein into a courtroom. And you need to be clear about that.
Me Too advocates noted Thursday's ruling was based on legal technicalities and not exoneration. Weinstein's lawyer said he will remain jailed through any new trial proceedings and is set to return to L.A., as he also faces a separate 16-year prison term in California after being convicted there for rape and sexual assault last year. The Manhattan DA's office stated Thursday it would do everything in its power to retry Weinstein's case. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
TikTok's Chinese regime-linked parent company Bytedance, facing a U.S. ban, says it has no plans to sell the popular app.
The statement overnight is the company's first official response to the new U.S. law that gives TikTok roughly 1 year to find a new owner.
President Biden signed the measure into law as part of the national security bill this week.
If Bytedance fails to sell TikTok, TikTok will face a total ban from U.S. app stores. The White House says the law is not about a ban and wants to see TikTok sold.
The administration says the concern is over China's ownership and control of the app.
TikTok CEO says the company would fight in courts to stay in the U.S. India banned TikTok entirely in 2020.
And coming up, a young man receives divine inspiration to become a police officer. The years in service, he says, helped shape him for a future journey to build a special school for those in need.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang green vegetable omega-3, greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
Does shopping for bladder control products have you feeling like you need someone to be on the lookout for you? Now you have your privacy back. We're HDIS, and we home deliver bladder control products directly to you. We're always on the lookout for you. You get free shipping in plain, unmarked boxes. So your private matters stay private. We understand how you feel. For over 35 years, we've delivered bladder control products to millions of Americans, just like you. You don't have to worry about incontinence any longer. Call now for your free product sample pack and over $45 in money-saving coupons. At HDIS, we're always in stock. We carry all brands in hundreds of styles and sizes. You'll be sure to get what you need, guaranteed.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog and $45 in money-saving coupons and free product samples, call 800-701-6159. That's 800-701-6159.
Meet the scan, a simple procedure whose mission is to detect lung cancer early.
I'm here to save you!
But I feel fine.
That's great, but you may still be at high risk for lung cancer.
Oh man, that's a new fence.
If you smoke, early detection could save your life. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
We come from a long line of farmers, and there's a sense of pride, but there's also a significant amount of pressure.
Farmers have to take care of their physical and their mental health, because what's a farm without a farmer?
Watching the sun come up, that's my time. I can have a cup of coffee, and every day is a new opportunity.
That's cool. Your hand's gotten so Yay!
Don't forget to check in on yourself. Love your mind.
Thanks for staying with us. NASA released an image to celebrate the 34th anniversary of the Hubble Space Observatory's launch. That was on April 24th, 1990.
This stunning new image shows glowing gas emitted by a dying star.
The Little Dumbbell Nebula has a unique namesake shape. The image may also include evidence the star gobbled up another star before it collapsed. The Little Dumbbell Nebula is just one of 53,000 objects Hubble has observed over 34 years.
Wow, look at those colors. The Hubble Space Telescope has made 1.6 million observations to date. Astronomers worldwide rely on its growing database to make new discoveries. Yeah, those are some really important experiments they're doing out there, and all that gathering of that data.
Right, and apparently, 44,000 papers have been published thanks to the Hubble observations. And so thankfully, hopefully there's many more to come.
Yeah, we can just learn so much about our universe from it.
Yeah, very important. And that dumbbell is so beautiful. So an astronomer's favorite for a reason.
Yeah, I'm glad we had a chance to see it.
Yeah. All right, and in today's Inspired, turning tragedy into triumph, a former police officer from Atlanta and his wife established a boarding school in West Virginia called Chestnut Mountain Ranch.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has the story of how the ex-cop's tough lessons became inspiration to give back to the community.
Former Atlanta police officer Steve Finn grew up in a Christian home. He says he experienced a period of wandering during his teenage years. When he was 20, he asked God to reveal himself.
And he did. And I got into law enforcement. I was able to impact a lot of people during those years. I think God used my law enforcement years to help others, but conversely, he used those years to shape me and equip me for where I'm at today.
Finn says he loved his 12 years as a policeman, but something was troubling him. Too many children's lives were ending in bad ways, getting caught up in the judicial system or ending up in an early grave.
My wife and I started these what-if conversations, like what if we did more? What if we helped these children before things got so bad?
They soon became inspired by a Christian children's home in North Georgia called Eagle Ranch. Seeing children's lives being turned around, a seed was planted. They decided to found an all-boys school for troubled youths in West Virginia. With a foster care rate 4 times the national average, they felt the state had the greatest need. They moved there in 2005 with the plan of giving it 12 months. Down to the last $12.54 at their lowest, they eventually found land and a miracle happened. The owner told the Finns he liked what they were doing. He wanted to see what God does, and he held off other buyers so they could start their school.
There was no roads here. There was no utilities. It was just a raw piece of mountain in West Virginia. But I realized that something wonderful just had happened, and we had our stake in the ground. We went from getting ready to move back to Georgia to burning our ships. And here we were with our stake in the ground.
Help came swarming in unexpectedly from churches, corporations, and some Atlanta Falcons players. Today, they have 300 acres and are building a 4th boys' home, all of it debt-free. The school on their property is nationally accredited.
We've got a population of young men that they need somebody to come alongside them for a season of their life and show them unconditional love, show them structure.
Finn says most of the kids that end up on the ranch were heading down a dangerous road.
We're completely flipping the script. And it's not only just getting a high school diploma, but it's launching them into their adult years with those gifts and talents that we identified while they were here.
One of their former kids is now the chief of police in a nearby town. Finn says he comes to the ranch all the time with his patrol car in his uniform. Another is with the FBI.
A lot of these kids are going straight into trade work, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, heavy machinery operating, and it is a good living for these kids, and it's often quick. They can get out of high school, they can get trained, and they can start earning a paycheck. It's a great launch pad into their adult years.
Finn says there is a plan for everyone, and that once you surrender to a power greater than yourself, your gifts and their purpose begin to be revealed, and the right path will appear before you. Reporting by Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
That is really great. And what grit, building it up from the bottom up, with just nothing there. They got to put all those utilities in and everything.
Exactly. But, also imagine, being a cop and seeing all these problems, being confronted with all the world's problems every day. And I applaud that, really, that one day he was just like, let's find a way to solve that and make the world a little bit better.
Yeah, and think about all the pupils there. They all have a common background, so they all can help each other out. They understand each other. Fosters a good learning environment.
For sure, and they build such lifelong relationships, right? Like he mentioned, that police chief that keeps coming back up until this day. That's awesome.
Yes.
All right, truly heartwarming, this story, and we want to wrap up our show on that note. But be sure to stay tuned for NTD's News Today broadcast at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That's coming up.
And for round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
That's right. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Funny expression.